In my opinion, New World has 3 major issues right now that should be addressed as soon as possible. Now, if I'm honest, these issues are sort of all tied together in their own little way, but I think the issues are simply these: gold, balance update frequency, and casual players sort of being a little bit stuck. So let me sit down, let's talk about it. Now, one of these issues was discussed by Male Oreo, a fellow YouTuber and Twitch streamer. I'm going to leave a link to his video. His issue is mostly talking about gold and the gold sinks in the game, and then the raw gold generation. I just want to point out this video because I am aware of it. Yes, it was 9 days ago, but I wanted to wait a bit before I sort of weighed in. But it does highlight something here, and that is about gold sinks. And the main gold sinks in the game right now are the Respecs, the Azoth Inductor, and the Chromatic Seal. Now, depending on how much you play the game, respecking depends on, like what you're doing. If you only have one build, maybe you're only ever doing M2s, then it probably won't apply. In that case, you'd probably want to change your gems, and that's another gold sink. But it's not a raw gold sink because it's actually just going to whoever crafted them or whoever farmed them. But whatever, right? The main ones are the Chromatic Seal and Azoth Inductor for crafting. And these gold sinks are proving very impactful. The price of mats has very much decreased, and the reason it's decreased is, well, 1, there's less people actually going after it, so there is less demand, but 2, people simply cannot afford to buy them. They don't have the gold like they used to anymore. And I think pretty much everybody but the richest people who've got millions of gold are really starting to feel this one. It's very likely, if you're playing New World at the minute, that your gold is being depleted. Now, gold sinks are fine in theory, and I actually think that this one has been intentional. The amount of gold that's been given to players, and I use the word given, not that it was given freely, they obviously earned it, but the amount of gold that was given to players from wars meant that a lot of that gold wasn't leaving the economy. It was sort of just circulating and getting passed around. If I'm honest, it was probably getting passed to bots and then probably back to the war players in whatever way you can imagine. So I actually think the gold sink was probably intentional, at least I hope so, but the main problem is actually the raw gold generation. I did a video the other day talking about the main ways of getting gold, and that was basically do your dailies, and then if you want, you could basically go and farm Genesis 25 times a day, which just isn't very fun. And really, one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit in this video is the idea of getting fun gold. Yeah, you can go out and farm bananas, right? Farm Mithril if you can find a node, even though it's not worth very much. Farm Arakharcum, anything. And yes, you can sell it. But let's say you're a normal person. You have a job, you come home, spend a bit of time with your family, and you play in the evening. And then what do you want to do? You want to sit down and farm. You basically want to do labor for other people so that you can get gold and then try and enjoy the game. That's just not a fun loop. Now, I do think that the gold sink issue will slow down a little bit. We have stuff like the Winter Convergence Festival where they're going to basically give us some Chromatic Seals and some Azoth Inductors. That's very good, very well needed. And I do think the rate at which people will be spending will slow down. Once you get the best kind of gear, you've upgraded the artifacts, you might simmer down a little bit. Obviously, if you're trying to upgrade all the artifacts, well, you're in for a bit of pain. But just in general, I think the desire for these will slow down. The desire for crafting slows down, and therefore the gold sinks will also slow down. However, if we get big balance changes maybe every season, then that might be a perfect cycle that creates an issue for some players. And it actually nicely leads on to the second point, which is the frequency of balance changes. Now, let's be clear, obviously in an MMO with an ever-changing meta, things are going to get changed. You cannot expect your gear in a game like New World to survive until the next expansion. It's not really realistic. Now, the good thing is always that your gear is sort of holding value anyway. Like if you do have gear score 700 bis, even if the meta changes, it's probably going to be pretty decent gear anyway. But us humans, we want to think that we've got the best that there is. And if you change the balance, then a lot of people follow the meta. And that immediately then creates more gold sinks because people are then immediately recrafting. But the meta is doing something a little bit differently. I think it's perturbing people from playing the game. And what I mean by that is, if the meta is changing quickly, and let's be honest, we know that it is, look at the things that they've changed recently. Shuriken Heals got fixed and then nerfed, it had a timer on it, then that timer was changed from 5 seconds to 10 seconds, even though a lot of people sort of thought it was fine at 5 seconds. Ank got changed quite quickly, the stopwatch got changed, there's probably more artifact changes out there. Healers got a little bit impacted with the plague crits and disease and stuff like that. That's in turn meant people want either, I forgot if it's Invigorated or Vigor, I think it's Invigorated. People wanted those perks instead to try and counter this. The Blunderbuss took some significant nerfs, which, by the way, I do think were deserved. I'm not saying any of these nerfs were wrong. I just think the intensity of them may have been dialed up a little bit too high. I saw a lot of people in my Twitch chat being like, oh, I just managed to get some Shuriken Heals gear, and then they changed it from the 5-second cooldown to the 10-second cooldown, and then with the disease changes, basically sort of like doubly nerfs Shuriken Heals, and they're like, well, I mean, that's me done, basically. It's obviously a fine balance. That's why we use the term balance. If they do it too quickly, people get a little bit fatigued by having to get new gear all the time, and if they do it too slowly, people will get angry because the game might be in a frustrating state. People will literally just meta build. The amount of Firestaff Blunderbuss enjoys that I saw in like Arena is probably disproportionate to the amount I saw before that build was very strong. There's a reason for that. People start to going towards the meta because they don't want to lose. Pretty simple, really. And it means some people who basically got impacted by these changes that happened last week, they're like, oh, well, Season 4 is actually only, 3-4 weeks away? Do you know what? I'll just wait. And if they're waiting, that means there's actually a chance they might just not come back. So they have to be a little bit cautious there. I think they're sort of taking a sledgehammer to the problem rather than just tweaking the dials a little bit. I think mid-season patches should probably be tweaking the dials, and then I think the season patches should be where the big balance change happens, and I think they over-tweaked the dials a little bit this time. As I said, maybe hit it with a bit of a sledgehammer. Now, the reason for that, hopefully, is because it's the expansion and so much changed that they're like, oh, we made some massive oversteps and we need to walk that back. I'm hoping it's just sort of like a one-off. But part of the problem with doing this is it does highlight the issue about getting BIS. Getting BIS is not quite as easy as they said, and if you wonder what I mean by BIS or BIS, it's basically best in slot, so the best items you can get for your build. They sort of implied it would be easy, and I don't think that's really the case. I think for a lot of people, getting to maybe like 80% power is generally quite quick. Maybe not easy or anything like that, but you can sort of do it even like chest runs, M1s, M2s. You can sort of get there to be pretty strong high gear score, mostly decent perks. But getting the best in slot, well, that's a lot of effort and a lot of gold. That's crafting, that's upgrading named items, etc. So I don't know if they failed there, I don't know if it's what they want, but they sort of said one thing and it's not quite materialized. And the next part is that this is then hurting casuals even more. I think casuals are the player base that is most hurt by the gold sinks, the Azoth Inductor and the Chromatic Seal. If I'm honest, casual players should stay away from the Azoth Inductor, so let's not even think about that. But the Chromatic Seal, with all of those, the ones that you are needed to upgrade those artifacts, all the ones for the named items, all that kind of good stuff. If you do want to craft, you need them. I think the casuals are sort of getting out-golded, basically. They don't have enough gold, and they don't want to get that gold by farming bananas for 4 hours in an evening, because getting gold in New World at the minute is simply not fun. They should put gold behind the daily fun activities. Now, I say daily because if you put Outpost Rush gold to like 1,000 gold, okay, what would happen? People would farm it incessantly. Honestly, I could probably, now that I stream on Twitch all day, I could probably do maybe like 16, 20 Outpost Rushes a day. That would be a lot of gold generation. However, somebody can only do maybe like 2, probably, you know, that would be fine for. So they do have to be careful about this, and I'm worried here that I've used the phrase dailies, and I know there are some daily quests already. You do the faction missions, you get the gold from the portals, you get the gold from the named mobs and stuff like that, but I think we can go a little bit further with it and put it behind fun content. They've mentioned that they're going to do a daily bonus for expeditions once the automatic group finder comes in, and I think that's a good start, but I'd like to see this taken a little bit further. Maybe utilize Gypsum, because Gypsum is basically doing certain tasks and then getting rewarded for it. So why not put a little bit of gold by that? You could put maybe like 500 in the first 2 a day. Just a little bit of something, just to start with the lower end players here who don't have that much time to play. And I use the phrase lower end, I don't look down on you. I think being a casual is perfectly reasonable and probably the majority of the player base. But ultimately, I don't think farming is what people want to come home from work, speak to their families, spend time with their families, sit down and farm trees. Now, some people will want to do that. Fine, the game should cater to those people, obviously. However, you are sort of competing against bots a lot of the time, but let's ignore that. You want to get to your computer and do the fun content and then feel like you're actually in with a chance of getting best in slot gear. Now, some of you will say casuals should not get best in slot gear, and when I hear that, I hear a little bit of entitlement, to be honest with you. I also hear the fact that you probably don't want casuals to play the game, but the reality is there's a lot more casuals, I think, than you guys understand. You might say, let's reward the person who plays 10 hours a day because they play more. Well, I'd put it to you that if you have 10 people who play 2 hours a night, that's more than the people who play, than one person playing 10 hours. So let's just be a little bit careful with that. You have to cater towards the casuals if you want a decent player base. I don't think anybody can really truly deny that. Very few games cater to just the hardcore. It's possible, and I'm sure there'll be examples, feel free to name them. And if I'm honest, casuals aren't just struggling with gold, they're also struggling with dark matter acquisition. It's very hard for somebody who's playing not that frequently to get a lot of dark matter, which means they're sort of phased out of the game effectively. And as I said, I don't think that's what we want. I want casuals to be an integral key part of the game. I want the hardcore players to be rewarded. I think there should be stuff for the hardcore players. Maybe not the 1 million gold coming from Everfall or something like that, which, by the way, even though it used to be like 3 million, is probably worth more or worth just as much now because of the gold deflation. The gold is just simply worth more. But the hardcore players should get other things that they might enjoy. Prestige is a classic example. Titles, mount skins, etc. Give them interesting chases, but let the casuals actually get to that best in slot situation. I know some of you will be angry about that, but I sort of feel like the casuals should feel like that they can complete the game, and then the game should move on so that they have to do it again. And the hardcore players will already finish within week 1, probably day 1. Casuals at the minute, I think quite simply, are getting the shaft. Not just with gold, but with dark matter as well. My easy solution to that, as I already mentioned, is the gypsum orbs. Gypsum orbs used to give us umbral shards because that was the main currency. Now they don't give us anything. Why don't we put dark matter behind the gypsum orbs, or put some of it in there? And why don't we put a little bit of gold? You can cap how much you think we should get per day. That would make it a fun reward, because then you can do whatever content you enjoy and still get the gold that you want, instead of having to do portals, named enemies, chest runs, faction missions. Obviously, you'd probably have to cap that because people like me, I think I've got like 400 orbs, you know what I mean? I shouldn't be able to just blast all of them out and be a rich boy. Now, there's other issues with the game right now. The amount of gear that's dropping from M3s, or the people aren't enjoying the fact that there's not that many like BOEs, they're not really making much gold from that. There's all kinds of stuff, it's all sort of intertwined, but for me, these are the 3 key areas. The gold sinks are quite significant for all the players. The balance updates are perhaps a little bit too strong and a little bit too frequent at the moment. That's not to say don't give us balance, because we desperately need balance. We just need it at a key speed. Hit it once mid-season, hit it big at the end of the season or the start of the new one, and give gold to casual players in a fun way. Don't expect them to farm. Not that they've said that they expect them to farm, but if you guys say, oh, it's easy to make gold as a casual, you just have to go and farm for like 5 hours, that's not an enjoyable way. And some of you will be like, oh, you can do it economy wise, go at the trading post and try and learn how to flip things. Yeah, well, that's not a casual thing either, because you then need to understand the value of items. There's no fun way to make gold in New World at a significant level, and I think that needs to change. What you should do, if you want to support me, then becoming a Patreon is truly the best way, or come and discuss this with me on Twitch. I stream 6 days a week. Other than that, I hope you have a truly most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.